Welcome back to another episode of the Outsider Sports Baseball Podcast. Full house today. Ben back at it. Corey, Jason, John Pauline, Ben Mandel, Dylan, Mel, bringing you some NL East action. Had to save it. Made sure Ben was here. Talk about his Mets. We got John for his Phillies. Me and Dylan to play some spoilers, some devil's advocate. Talking about why both teams are going to miss the playoffs? Question mark. But first things first, Dylan, star fantasy baseball player, the guy that's going to lead his team to the promised land of fantasy championships, Mookie Betts. He's down 25 pounds. He weighs 150 pounds. He weighs 150 pounds.
We're not laughing at Mookie Betts. We're laughing at Ben just.
Ben couldn't stand your comment. I don't even know if we should edit this out.
No. But so Mookie hasn't had solid food in weeks, right? He's been before the Japan series where the Dodgers now, are 2-0 to start off the year. He's lost 25 pounds. He's living off of smoothies. His opening day's at risk. Dylan, are you worried for your fantasy team?
I'm completely worried for my fantasy team. I'm not worried for the Dodgers' real life team, and that's kind of why I'm more so worried about it in terms of fantasy purposes. The Dodgers have such a stacked roster that they could probably afford to put Mookie's health at the forefront and let him sit for a couple of weeks here if that's what he really needed. It sounds pretty serious. He hasn't played baseball in 3 weeks, and the Dodgers did have a series in Japan that counted towards their regular season, so he's not just dipping out on spring training at this point. This is a guy who's missed real time with this already. I would be worried if I was, or since I am a Mookie Betts fantasy baseball manager, but as somebody who, if you have a rooting interest on the Dodgers, I think you'll be all right without Mookie for the first couple weeks. But that'd be my prediction as to where this goes.
Yeah, if any team can withstand it, it's the Dodgers. But it's a little scary that they still really don't know what this mystery illness is.
Yeah, it's the worst possible case of food poisoning mixed with the flu, if I had to guess. Like kind of a back-to-back situation there.
I think they said all his vitals are good, like everything else checks out fine, like he feels good. It's just he can't. It's just eating solid food is the problem.
Yeah, even when he does come back though, playing 25 pounds lighter, it's going to take a while to get that weight back and to be able to use it in game, like for it to be healthy weight.
Yeah, and however, will the Dodgers lineup survive with Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, Shohei at the top?
Don't forget Freddie Freeman.
I said Freeman.
Did you say Freeman? They're just so deep, you forget every player on that team. Michael Conforto.
Yeah.
Miggy Rojas.
Yeah, Max Muncy, Tommy Edman, NLCS MVP.
Will Smith.
What a team.
But, Ben, now that we got you here, we do need to get you on record with your AL East division predictions. So who's coming in first place for you?
I mean, look, if the AL East, it's an interesting division. I wasn't here for all the East talk, and the injuries or something that Yankees are going to have to overcome. But look, he went out and for the time in 8 years, got a big money pitcher. So that should help soft Eric Cole blow just a bit. Matt being a lefty helps. I still think the Yankees will end up winning this division, but I think what comes behind them is really going to be a question mark. I think the Red Sox are going to be much improved there. I do like the Red Sox coming out in being a playoff team this year. I think maybe high a little bit more at the deadline. I think Toronto is going to end up being in last place. That's music to course. And then rounding it out, we're going to have Baltimore in third and Bay in fourth.
Man, I really hope that StreamYard picked that up differently than we heard it, man, because you were skipping like a record.
We got the picks. So you got New York, the Yankees in first, Boston in second, Baltimore third, Tampa fourth, and then Toronto in last.
Correct.
And then just to reiterate, I have Boston in first, Baltimore in second, the Yankees in third, Toronto fourth, Tampa fifth. Dylan has Boston in first, the Yankees in second, Toronto third, Baltimore fourth, Tampa fifth. And John has Yankees first, Boston second, Baltimore third, Toronto fourth, and Tampa fifth. But now that we have that squared away, everybody on record, let's talk about the NL East. You had three of these teams making the playoffs last year. 2024, the standings, the Phillies did win the division, 95 and 67. The Braves and Mets both tied. You had that weird last game of the season, game 163, where they split the doubleheader and screwed the Diamondbacks out of a postseason berth, where the Mets became that dangerous 7th seed. So the Braves and Mets both were 89 and 73. The Nationals 71 91. The Marlins 62 and 100. But it's a new year, new changes. Teams are getting healthier. Teams are losing their mascots. No Grimace, no OMG this year.
I mean, we might once again use Grimace Mets for Ben's profile picture in these videos. So the Grimace meme can live on for us.
Yeah, but that's more of us hearing Ben's audio, us grimacing. That's really what it means. But let's start off with John's
I just
Phillies.
want to make sure it works.
You sound better now.
You're
video.
You're good now.
But let's start off with John's Phillies. We're gonna save your Mets, Ben, till we get this all sorted. But John, the Phillies had a decently quiet offseason. They only added Max Kepler, an outfielder, 1 year, $10 million. Jordan Romano to be a reliever, 1 year, $8.5 million. Joe Ross, a reliever, 1 year, $4 million. And they lost Carlos Estevez to Kansas City, Jeff Hoffman to Toronto, Austin Hayes to the Reds, and Dylan Covey to the Mets. Did the Phillies get better in your mind?
Well, don't forget they got Luzardo too.
They did get Luzardo. You're right.
I don't know if they got better. I don't really know if they got worse. I mean, Luzardo helps out a ton with the starting pitching there, which is good, which I already thought the starting pitching was already really good. I think they needed help more in the bullpen than anything. I mean, I would have really liked them to see go after an actual closer, like a shutout closer. But because I think that's that was their biggest issues. I've seen the past couple of years, it's just they can't close games out, or the relief pitching always buckles. So,
yeah, I mean, Jeff Hoffman was a pretty good reliever for you guys, was he not?
He was, and then playoffs happened, and he fell. Everyone fell apart. All of them, they all fell apart in the playoffs.
And I believe I saw that Ranger Suarez is starting the year off on the IL to begin. That's a tough blow.
Yeah, that's gonna hurt because now I think they have to put Walker in the rotation, and we don't want
the
that.
Third year of the Taijuan Walker Philadelphia Phillies experience lives on.
He looked bad. He had a decent spring though. He looked pretty good.
Oh, they always fool you with a decent spring.
But you don't know. But I mean,
that's
having
story
Luzardo
of Taijuan Walker.
It is the story of Taijuan Walker.
Yeah, but
I mean, Dylan, what do you think? Is Harper, Castellanos, is Bohm going to be able to replicate?
So here's the thing. The Phillies are running it back, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. They were one of the better teams throughout the regular season in baseball all of last year. And as we know, the way that baseball can work, sometimes it's about who's hot and who's not. And the Phillies got into the playoffs, and they absolutely were not. They could not hit the ball at all. especially in big moments. They just could never get that big hit, and the Mets could, and that's why the Mets beat them in that playoff series. But I have absolutely no problem with the Phillies essentially running it back and kind of cleaning up around the edges. I much prefer a Max Kepler to an Austin Hayes, who they had last year. Luzardo, once he's in the rotation over a Taijuan Walker, is an upgrade. Romano is at least a true closer. Kirkring gets to be the setup guy. I'm a big fan of what the Phillies got going on here. At the end of the day, the lineup is still pretty much the same one as last year, but that's also the same one that took them to the World Series a couple of years ago. So I'm chilling on what the Phillies did. I think that they are in a fine spot.
What is the one player you guys would say is most important to the Phillies' success this year? If you had to boil it down, and if this one guy performs, the Phillies will be fine.
Honestly, Harper.
It's very clearly Bryce Harper.
Yeah. Because when he's hitting, when he's going, when he's
Sorry,
operating
John,
all
John.
cylinders. I'm sorry, you're like cutting out, so I can't tell when you're talking. That's my bad. But when Bryce
No,
Harper's
I didn't realize I was doing that.
when Bryce Harper's operating on all cylinders, though, like the whole Phillies team does well. Like everyone does well when he does well.
Yeah, I actually have a different answer, and my answer is going to come as a surprise. And I think Harper obviously is meaningful to the Phillies lineup, but at the end of the day, we know that the Phillies are going to make the postseason. The biggest player for their success to me is always Aaron Nola. The biggest strength that the Phillies have on paper is the ability to go into a postseason with the best 1-2 combo in baseball when Nola is right. Is he going to be right in those big games in September and October? That's the question for me.
See, for me, I think Harper was like the too obvious answer, and Harper will always get his. I'm not worried about him. But who do they have after Harper? Is it Schwarber? Is it Castellanos? What are we
Well,
going to see? About
Schwarber batting cleanup now.
Alec Boehm's another guy who I think
Turner.
is vital to the Phillies.
Turner has to do what
Trey Turner.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not going to say one player specifically, but I'm just going to say whoever the number two is, whoever steps up and takes on that role, they need a Robin to Harper's Batman. And
Yep.
at one point when they made the World Series, it was Castellanos or Schwarber, but they've both taken a bit of a step back, especially Castellanos, who isn't as formidable as he was when he first got to Philly. Who takes over that role and supplements Harper to lengthen that lineup?
Yeah, I think Trey Turner needs to have a 350 OBP this year. I think he needs to be back into great to elite offensive production for the Phillies to have a high level run. This is a guy who they gave a 10-year contract to because of his bat, and it just hasn't really produced over the last 2 years in the way that they want it to. Once he's on base, he's a massive threat to steal a bag and be in scoring position just like that for Harper and now Schwarber, who the Phillies are moving to clean up, which I petitioned for all last year. I think that it could be another magical run for the city of Philadelphia if things play out right for the Phillies.
Yeah, the Phillies are going to be right in the thick of it. But another team that's right there is the Braves. Now, a little disappointed Ben had to take a break from us because if
You can't
anybody
talk
was going to be
Jerks and
a
Profar.
Braves killer, a Mets killer, I should say, it's going to be Jerks and Profar, who signed with the Braves. 3 years, $42 million. I mean, he screams Met killer and Philly killer for that matter. But he's going to be somebody who I think is going to crush in the NL East. Alex Verdugo, our old friend, signed there 1 year, $1.5 million. Brian De La Cruz, 1 year, $860K. And Connor Gillespie, a reliever, 1 year, $820K. So they didn't add too much on the top end. We can talk about them bringing back Jesse Chavez for a sixth time. But what they lost is what is much more important. Max Fried is gone. Charlie Morton, gone. AJ Minter, gone. Travis d'Arnaud, gone. Griffin Canning, gone to the Mets. Ramon Laureano's out of there. John Brebbia to Detroit. He's a reliever. Gio Urshela, the third baseman, went to the A's. Luke Jackson, a reliever, to the Rangers. They lost a lot of guys, the Braves, Now, they should be getting back a healthy couple guys. Ronald Acuna Jr. should be back, I believe, is May is what they're targeting, probably Memorial Day,
Yep.
from what I've seen.
Mhm.
And that's more than enough time for him to make an MVP case. Ozzy Albies, Austin Riley. They have guys.
Spencer Strider.
Spencer Strider is a big one.
Spencer Strider, that's a huge one. But
Yeah.
again, losing Max Fried is definitely a big issue. Chris Sale, is age ever going to catch up to him?
I mean, health has always been an issue for Sale. He was so good last year because he was healthy. And, I just mentioned Nola being so important for the Phillies because they could have the best 1-2 punch. But if they're right and everybody's healthy and everybody's on, give me Strider and Sale over those two as the 1-2 punch. Chris Sale, Cy Young last year. Spencer Strider, a guy who was a favorite for the Cy Young coming into the year, 200 plus strikeout player. My one question really with the Braves is the back half, and that's of the lineup and this pitching rotation. When healthy, Strider, Sale, Schwillenbach, a fine 3. What do you get from 4 and 5 from the lineup? And before Acuna's back, you're looking at Baldwin, Kelnick, and Arcia at 7, 8, 9. Do they produce enough early on? In this division, this NL East, it's going to be competitive. It's going to be push and pull. And if the Padres and Diamondbacks are as good as we expect them to be, one of the 3 teams that everybody has at the top of this division might miss the playoffs. Will the Braves, while only without Strider and Acuna for 1 to 2 months, is that too much?
So who's the guy? We talked about it with the Phillies. Who's the guy that this season hinges on? But to make it fair, let's take out Acuna and Strider since they're coming off of injury.
The thing
It's
is, I
got to
was
be
gonna
Austin
say is,
Riley, right? Like, to me, that's their best player outside of Acuna.
I mean, I feel like you need. I mean, if we're going with the pitching thing, I feel like you need Chris Sale to perform like he did last season. Because I mean, with Strider coming off the injury here, and he's going to be, starting late. Like you really need Chris Sale to have a performance like he did last season in order for them to compete.
I agree with John. I think obviously Acuna, when he's healthy, produces, but even if Riley's just kind of an average Austin Riley season with Profar, Olsen, Ozuna, Harris, Albies, and returning Acuna, the offense is going to be there enough for the Braves to be in games. But without Max Fried, without Charlie Morton, with some question marks in the back half of the starting rotation, one, you can't afford Chris Sale to go down, but you can't afford for him not to be good when he's out there either. Chris Sale needs to have ace level numbers again, especially as this season opens up for Atlanta. Again, obviously when we get down to the thick of it in August and September, everybody's going to be eyeing those games, but these games early on count just as much towards the end. And if any of these teams come off to a slow start, and the Phillies, the Braves, and the Mets who we're going to get to, it could be all they wrote.
Yeah, just with Sale, my only real concern is look what happened at the end of last year. I don't think he pitched in the postseason, right? He kind of took himself out. He wouldn't pitch in the doubleheader, and I don't believe he pitched. I'm gonna fact check myself, but I don't think he pitched in a 3-game set.
I don't
Either
think so.
when the Braves got eliminated because he was hurt and tired.
I think you're right.
I'm almost positive you're right.
So is Sale somebody who they need to? Yeah, he didn't pitch due to fatigue. That was what they considered it.
Yeah,
So-
basically that was, hey, we don't think we're going to compete next year, and his forearm's probably already sore. Let's sit him down.
Right. So is he somebody that they might need to skip a start here and there, try to keep him healthy?
I
Maybe
think
have him
maybe
hit
in the
IL
back half of the year, you trade for a veteran pitcher that's on a losing team, and then you could afford to do that. Off the top of my head, I don't know, but say the Blue Jays are doing bad. Scherzer, who's on a 1-year deal. The Giants are doing bad. Verlander's on a 1-year deal. Bring in someone like that and then switch over to a 6-man rotation. But I don't think you could afford for Sale not to be on his A game to open up the season.
Especially
Right,
with Strider. Like you need Sale to step up.
Absolutely. And then even after the Braves, we're going to go on to the Nationals, who I think could be one of those up and coming, surprising teams. They added Trevor Williams, 2 years, $14 million to join their rotation. Mike Soroka, former Brave, a guy who I've always been pretty high on, 1 year, $9 million. Josh Bell goes back to the Nationals to play first, 1 year, $6 million. Kyle Finnegan, another former National reliever, 1 year for $6 million. Jorge Lopez to join that bullpen, 1 for $3 million. Lucas Sims, 1 for $3 million, a reliever. Our old friend Ahmed Rosario, former Met, 1 year for $2 million to be a little infielder for them. Paul DeJong, 1 year, $1 million. And they only lost Patrick Corbin, who just joined the Rangers. So that's not even a net negative for them, because although he 8 innings, he was just consistently like a 5 ERA. That's addition by subtraction, literally, because I think just an average pitcher there could give them, a better outing on more than one occasion.
Yeah, I think this is the year where you start to see some of the fruits of moving on from Turner, Soto, like blowing it up after the World Series run. Mackenzie Gore, for the first time in his career last year, got under a 4 ERA, had over 181 strikeouts. Can he continue to improve? CJ Abrams at the top of this lineup, he's going to be a 30 stolen base guy. I'm excited to see what they get out of Luis Garcia, up and coming second baseman prospect for this team. Their middle infield's real exciting. They have a vet like Josh Bell, like Nate Lowe at first base. I think this is a really fun mix of talent. And, it's not a team that I am going to predict to make the playoffs, but this is that exact mix of a couple vets, some young and up and coming players that could pop, where you could see this team potentially snag a 6th seed in the playoffs if some of the other upper teams get hurt.
I mean, you're going to have Dylan Cruz coming up, Brady House coming up. So, like, this is a team that I think maybe this is kind of like
the year before the year.
Yeah, the year before the year. Kind of like when we said about the Diamondbacks, when we were like thinking it was like a year before the year and they ended up being like really good. I don't know if the Nationals are going to do what the Diamondbacks did then, but like this is like the year before the year that, we might be talking about them, being like a playoff team, or at least like a fringe playoff team.
Yeah, I definitely agree there.
Because like Dylan Cruz is, I think he's one of the like top. I think what is he like?
I mean, Luis Garcia is expected to come in and be an instant producer. I think it's possible he leads their team in batting average the first year he's up.
And Dylan Cruz is 4th in the top 100, so like he's going to be an instant
and an excellent first name.
Yeah, absolutely,
an absolute producer at the first name spot.
So who's the guy though? Who does this season hinge on?
I don't know if there is a guy for this team. I mean, I know that it's like kind of the question we've been going off of here, but I really think if the Nats had success at a real high level, which I do think for them is stealing a 6th seed in the NL playoffs, it would have to be a team effort. Maybe you say Mackenzie Gore because he would have to be the ace of the staff and he's the easiest guy to pick, but I'm really looking at a team effort here.
CJ Abrams and his maturity. To me, that's a huge part of what's going to propel this team forward. If he cannot be caught gambling in the middle of the night, the night before his team has a game, I think that's a real good sign for the direction this team is going.
Hey, let the man live.
I think this, like the Nationals, one of the cases where you need your young players to step up. I think that's going to be the success. Is like not the veteran players they have, but all the young players coming up with Dylan Cruz and all them, coming up and producing.
They're a team that I think is kind of like Baltimore a couple years ago, where if it goes right, they could make it. But like we've seen in the past, when teams kind of play really well that year before the year, that step back in the year that's supposed to be the year is pretty steep. Last year was supposed to be the Orioles' year. That was the year that everything was supposed to come together, and we saw the step back they took.
Man, who could have predicted that?
Certainly nobody here with a vendetta against Baltimore.
Whoa, vendetta.
I mean, now
I
you have
just picked Boston to win the AL East. I don't want to hear that I have bias. I called it like I saw it, and I was
you were right.
correct.
I don't think you were alone in that assumption, though. But Baltimore starting Zach Eflin again, Grayson Rodriguez, another injury. We were talking about
another opportunity to talk smack about the Orioles.
John's Orioles. We were talking about the injuries that they didn't have. Gunnar Henderson looks like he's going to start the year on the IL. A lot of question marks going along around them, and that could be what the Nationals' future holds. Though a really young team that could exceed expectations, and then kind of come crashing down a little bit the next year, and cause a lot of question marks about are they actually good enough.
Yeah,
you want to be not the Orioles, but you also don't want to be the Blue Jays who just never took that step.
Yeah,
White Sox who never took that step when they had those expectations.
That's fair. I feel like the Nationals would be willing to be the Orioles as things
think so,
currently
too.
stand.
The Orioles, the Diamondbacks, I think, are in that same category. But there isn't that one team that got young really quick and then took that big step without that fallback, because the Dodgers supplemented through free agency, the Yankees free agency, the Mets did a very weird rebuild, but also free agency. And
I mean, we'll talk about the Mets.
Black
I'm not even
voodoo
sure
magic.
if things were fixed there.
But the Nationals have a lot of question marks, but they should be a fun team at the very least with a lot of young talent. A team that's lacking fun and young talent. Emphasis on the talent. They have a lot of young players, and that's the Marlins.
Yeah, at least the Nationals are a question mark. We know what the Marlins are. Trash.
Worst run organization in the MLB.
It's definitely not an accurate statement. The Rockies exist.
Go to the White Sox.
The Marlins actively
the Angels and the Pirates,
and they actively trade away their good players for players that they don't actually need. Like they.
Speaking of which, Sandy Alcantara.
If he actually figured out how to pitch with the pitch clock, he's going to be dangerous for a contender.
I mean, they're going to trade him away. Everything I've heard out of the spring spells to Sandy having a bounce back year and being traded at the deadline.
They're going to trade him.
To the Yankees.
Every time
the Yankees will certainly be a buyer at this point, but I'm sure somehow he'll end up on the Dodgers.
Well, the Marlins, they added a starting pitcher in Cal Quantrill, 1 year, $3.5 million.
I actually like Cal.
I do too. And first baseman Eric Wagaman, 1 year, $800K. Do you know how many
1 year, $800K is the second most notable signing for this team?
It's also
that sink in.
Only 2 signings that they've had on the Major League roster. Do you know how many guys that they've lost to free agency on the Major League roster?
Hold on. Juan Soto just made more than...
None. They didn't lose a single player to free agency.
So it's tough to say that they didn't get better. All they did was add.
The Jesus Luzardo trade does kind of throw a wrench into that. But do the Marlins even deserve to be a team?
No.
I mean, I mean,
the idea. I'll say this: the Marlins were in the playoffs a couple years ago. Did give the Phillies like a fight. It's not to say that the Marlins are a great team right now, but I think there's plenty of organizations that have sustained garbage more than the Marlins.
They had a good team and then traded it all away for no reason.
How many times?
Not no reason, because some of the owners in baseball want to win and some want to make money. And since all the revenue is split, you don't pay good players, you make money.
Wait, how many times have the Marlins won their division in franchise history in the last 30 plus years?
God,
almost 40 years.
In my lifetime, I can't remember them ever winning it, which makes me think maybe in the early 2000s. Maybe.
The Marlins have never won the NL East. In franchise history, they've made the playoffs 3 times.
What a surprise.
And hold on. They've made the playoffs 3 times, but when in the playoffs, there is a 67% chance that they'll win the World Series.
They do have 2 World Series wins. They became a team in 1993.
When they get there, they mean business.
In their 33 years now of being a team, 32 complete seasons. They're going to be in year 33. They've made the playoffs 3 times, won the World Series twice, and the third time they made the playoffs was during a shortened COVID season. That I had a future on them to win a World Series, and they didn't do it.
There is a 6% chance the Marlins will win the World Series every year of their franchise. I don't know if many franchises have a better World Series winning percentage compared to existence percentage.
I'm actually now I'm gonna try to see who's got a better percentage, the Marlins or the Yankees.
I mean, it's probably the Yankees. Because the 27, the Yankees would have had to have been around for like 500 years.
But with the Marlins,
well, 2 World Series in 32 years, because we're not going to count this one, right? And then the Yankees.
I mean, the Yankees have been around for what, 100?
Yankees started 123 years.
So a 20%.
So we're going to go 122, and they've won 27 times.
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees have a better percentage, 20%.
You did that much quicker than I was. I was going to try to get like the exact number.
Statistically, we should win one in every 5 years. Yet 2009 doesn't feel like 5 years ago. But I don't know if there's many other teams.
The Marlins win 6.5% of the time.
Yeah.
The Yankees, on the other hand, if we're doing, real math, plug it into the handy dandy calculator. 22% of their seasons they've won a World Series. The Marlins have won 6.5%. So the percentage still isn't great for the Marlins
compared to the Yankees. Okay, because the Yankees have the most. But
who's
next? Who's next? The Cardinals, right? The Cardinals with 11. They've been around 127 years. 11 divided by 127, 8%. The Marlins are just slightly below the Cardinals, who have the second most World Series all the time.
Then I guess
stop
we should
trying to make the Marlins sound good.
Well, hold on, because how many World Series do the Phillies have?
Look, I think what 3?
2. And then they've been around for how long? If it's longer than 33 years, we know who's got a better percentage.
So are we saying that it's probably better off being a Marlins fan to watch a World Series championship than the Phillies?
I mean, theoretically, you've probably seen the same amount. Or.
Now, do we want to bring, does this work for all sports?
I think we've gone off the rails. The Marlins stink this year, but they're decent in terms of winning percentage in a totality.
That means
compared to the Rockies.
It looks much better than it seems.
When the Marlins go in, they win. And when not, Derek Jeter sends their best players to the Yankees.
Yes. But now to talk about the real big question mark team of the NL East. Unfortunately, Ben had to leave us. He had to reboot.
He was scared for this topic.
He was scared because he knows that we are going to be truthful and honest and call it as we see it. And he didn't want to face the music that the Mets' big ticket free agent signing is just a closer who's moonlighting as a starting pitcher.
Well, I don't know if that was their big ticket free agent signing.
I mean, Frankie Montas, we're going to call him a big ticket guy?
You're close. It was an ex-Yankee.
I mean, Clay Holmes, we talked about. I don't think Nick Madrigal or Drew Smith were Yankees or Justin Hagenman.
Listen, somebody wanted their own team in New York, and that's fine.
So let's talk about Mr. Soto, who the Yankees and Mets played in a spring training game, today. As we record this is
Aaron
Monday.
Boone told him he looked like garbage in that uniform.
Well, I don't know if either of you guys, I doubt John did, and Dylan, I'm sure you were working probably. Did you watch the game?
I wasn't working, but I still didn't watch the game.
So I had it on just in the background while I was at work because it's the Yankees. And the game was played in Port St. Lucie. That's where the Mets play their spring training games. And you can very audibly hear Juan Soto getting booed every time he got to the plate. And one kid during Soto's second at bat started screaming, "Traitor, traitor, traitor." Now, this wasn't at George Steinbrenner Field. This was in Port St. Lucie. They're not neighbors. They're close. They're driving distance, but this was a Mets spring training home game, and Soto was audibly getting booed. What does that say about how New York is going to receive him when he does play in Queens?
When he plays in Queens?
Like
when he plays in Queens and he's not playing the Yankees, he'll be cheered.
when he does play the Yankees in Queens?
I still think he'll be cheered. I don't
Am
know
I
how
reading
many.
too much into this?
I think
spring
you're like
training?
reading too much into how many Mets fans live in Port Lucie.
I mean, how many Yankee fans live in Tampa?
What
A
Mets
lot-
fans
a
are gonna
lot
go to
more, I
spring
think.
training games?
But
I
like,
think
it's,
just a lot more Yankees fans in general live around the world.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier to find Yankee fans in any area than Mets fans.
well, so here, let's kind of go over who the Mets added. They added Juan Soto on a Fugazi 15-year, $765 million contract. Now, it's really not worth that much. With the opt-outs, you can get to 805. Plus, there's other perks that I think will end up raising the luxury tax number once it's fully investigated and after the new CBA, because it also includes suites and a clothing shopping stipend for Soto's mom. So all
They
that stuff
overpaid.
will get included, and I think we will see this rise from that $51 million AAV to the 55 and possibly even closer to 60. Sean Manaea re-signed 3 years, $75 million. Pete Alonso on a 2-year, 54. That second year being a opt-out, I believe. Clay Holmes, 3 years, 38 to be a starter. That's going to be interesting. Dylan, what was his nickname? Remind me.
Cardiac Clay.
Cardiac Clay. Just what you want to hear about your opening day starting pitcher. Frankie Montas, starter, 2 years, 34, going garbage bin diving from ex-Yankees. AJ Minter, 2 for 22. Jesse Winker, 1 for 7.5. The Mets added quite a bit of guys. Ryan Stanek is back, 1 year, 4.5. Griffin Canning, 1 year, 4.25. Nick Madrigal, 1 year, 1.35 million. I believe he's out for the year now. Drew Smith, 1 year, 1 million. Only player I've ever seen in person get thrown out for sticky stuff. That was pretty cool. Justin Hagenman, 1 year, 850K to be a starter. And Dylan Covey, who we talked about earlier, he's a reliever, 1 year, 850. But they lost a few guys too. Luis Severino to the A's, Harrison Bader to the Twins, Jose Quintana, that's addition by subtraction, to Milwaukee, Phil Maton to St. Louis. Brooks Raley and JD Martinez are also both free agents. Jose Iglesias also went to the Padres and made their opening day roster.
OMG.
So I don't know what to make of the Mets because I think their pitching, top to bottom, is very poor.
I think it's very easy what to make of the Mets. They are a team who very well could miss the playoffs, but if they get in, you don't want to face them. And it's just that simple. Because for a sustained 162 game regular season, I just don't see how the pitching holds up, and the lineup isn't deep enough to really necessarily carry them over the 90 win mark in terms of offense. Lindor and Soto are MVP candidates at the top, and Alonso's got pop. We'll see what Vientos is over a full season, but Nimmo, Winker, Siri, Beatty, those aren't guys that get me excited in the regular season. And the pitching, Clay Holmes, opening day starter, Kodai Senga, the best starting pitcher on the roster, hasn't shown once the ability to make it through a full 162 game season, so they can't rely on him for a full year. McGill, Peterson, Manaea when he comes back. This is not a good pitching rotation, and the bullpen is average. Again, if they get into the playoffs, this lineup has the ability to get hot and take out any team. We saw it last year, and now they add Juan Soto. The lineup is very, very suitable for postseason baseball. The question is, do the Mets make it to postseason baseball based on the rest of the team? I do not know.
I think they have a good lineup, but like I said, like Dylan said, like the pitching is really weak. Like that's probably their weakest link right now. And I can see them getting to the playoffs, but I can't see them going very far with what they have pitching wise.
I mean, exclude Kodai Senga. And for anybody that's new to watching this, I'm a Yankees fan here, so there's no bias in what I'm about to say. I know you'll see the Eagle stuff behind me. Exclude Kodai Senga. When healthy, is there a starting pitcher in the Mets rotation that would make the Phillies rotation of Wheeler, Nola, Ranger, Christopher Sanchez, Jesus Luzardo? If you exclude Kodai Senga, is there one? I don't think so.
I think there's one that you can argue, and that's Sean Manaea, based off of last season.
Argue he'd be number 5, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
But how many teams can you say that for?
Well, we're talking about the NL East.
But yeah. So, I mean, look at
in terms of
Braves.
their ability to compete with a team
Right.
like the Phillies,
Where do
though.
would you say the same thing, though, where the Mets' best pitcher slots in as the Braves' number 4, almost 5 starter?
Probably 4.
Probably,
And when
yeah.
Strider's healthy, probably 4. And, when you look at other playoff teams in the NL, probably not sniffing the Dodgers rotation. The Padres, when healthy, again, maybe 5. The Diamondbacks, I don't think at all. The Cubs probably 3 or 4, but the Central's a little weaker. And those were just my playoff teams.
But then you also have the bullpen, which you have Edwin Diaz and.
But what is Edwin Diaz now?
Right, he's off of that injury. He's got a full year after that Achilles.
It's just a fair question to what will he be compared to what his peak was, obviously.
Right. He missed 2 years ago. He missed pretty much the whole season. He had last year to kind of readjust, and now he'll have a fully healthy year. Just like we saw like Aaron Rodgers in football, or we'll see with Kirk Cousins. After you tear that Achilles, it takes another full year of playing to get you back to that level. So this is that year that Diaz should be back to his peak performance. Can he do it? What's there? Then reliever-wise, they brought back a lot of the same names and the same faces, but I just don't know if I trust guys like a Ryan Stanek, a Drew Smith to really get the job done.
I don't think you could trust them day to day in a 162. Again, maybe over a postseason run, they can get hot and they can pitch good. And that's kind of what happened last year.
Exactly.
Last year's Mets feel like the peak for this year's Mets to me as well.
I think you're right. They wrote a lot of gimmicks between Grimace and OMG and among other stuff. They rode that high and they kind of rallied behind it, which is commendable.
And Lindor made us some money when we bet him before his hot streak and MVP and then cashed out.
And Lindor hasn't really, I think from what I can remember, hasn't really been that good for the Mets until like halfway through last season. I don't remember.
Well, here, John, how long has Lindor been a Met?
I don't know.
I
feel like I just felt like I never noticed him on the Mets.
What are we? We're coming up on what, 7-8 years?
Yeah, because I just feel like the past few years, I feel like he hasn't done much. Like the past couple of years.
I mean, John,
how many All-Star appearances?
Hold on.
Well,
we need to rewind on Lindor hasn't done much. Coming from a Phillies fan after Lindor hit the dagger home run against you guys.
I said up until the last half of last year, I feel like he hasn't done too much.
I think that's a little discrediting to a player who's been an All-Star pretty often.
Well, here, that brings me to my next point. Lindor, this will be his 5th season as a Met. 2021 was his first. Do you know how many All-Star games he's made as a Met?
I mean, he definitely made last year.
He has made 0 All-Star games as a Met.
He didn't make last year?
Yeah,
he didn't. He had a slow start and was left off, and he was arguably going to be the first player to win the MVP without having made that year's All-Star game.
I mean, that was a
Lindor
hell of a
hasn't been
second half then, because you look at his season-long numbers, and it is shocking that he's not an all-star.
Lindor hasn't made an All-Star game since 2019.
I feel like when we did our all-star episode last year, we all had him in. So I'm almost thinking he was a snub
He
even.
was a snub, but he also didn't get the Mets fan vote behind him. So, there's that too, but he was snubbed. But he hasn't made an All-Star game as a Met. Last year was the second best year of his career, with a lot of those coming, in the second half, those numbers. It's just one of those things where he has, and John's kind of right, he's been very quiet as a Met. He was a superstar with Cleveland.
Like, I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying, like, he's not doing.
He hasn't lived up to the hype that he got when he came to the Mets. He was supposed to be that, perennial all-star MVP every year type guy, even though he has received MVP votes each of the last 3 seasons. It just hasn't materialized because he's been such a slow starter where it's taken him a few months in order to really get going. And I think he's the guy that this season hinges on. Alonso's whatever, Soto, who cares? It's Lindor's team. It'll never be Soto's team. It's not even Alonso's team. It's Lindor's team.
I don't know.
Lindor is the Mets.
I think to say it'll never be Soto's team after we just got done with a 3-minute sabbatical on how Lindor hasn't been that great for the Mets and how Juan Soto's an MVP level player who they just signed right before his prime is crazy talk.
Were the Yankees ever A-Rod's team?
I don't know if that's fair because Lindor hasn't had the success that Jeter had.
But Lindor also was there first. He's the guy that the Mets fans have rallied around.
Jeter had 4 before A-Rod showed up. Lindor doesn't have an all-star game before Soto shows up.
True.
Like, Jeter was making all-stars and winning World Series. Lindor's best memories as a Met were last year, and they lost in the NLCS. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, there's a different standard of winning with the Yankees and Mets, and I'm well aware of that. But at the end of the day, I think give it 2-3 years and we'll all look at the Mets as Soto's team. I think he's that good.
But that's another issue, though, with the Mets, and that brings it up to me is defensively, what are they? They have an atrocious outfield defense.
Yeah, they are interesting in the outfield, and I think that's why they brought in Jose Siri for sure, because they need somebody with a glove out there. To answer your question of who the season rides on, I think it's Mark Vientos. Can you get playoff Mark Vientos for a full 162? If so, the lineup should be good enough to power you to a 6 seed in the NL.
I agree with Dylan because I think they're really banking on Vientos to play like he did in the postseason.
I mean, they virtually need it.
They do because they're like I said, they're banking on him playing.
They need Vientos in the lineup to produce, or the pitching to be way better than we all expect. And because at the end of the day, even with Lindor, Soto, Alonso at the top of that lineup, it still won't be enough if one of those 2 things doesn't happen.
And there's a real chance that neither does happen. It's not a given.
No, it's not.
So
we've never seen either.
Right. So let's kind of gauge where we're feeling on this division. Pacoda, they have the Braves winning the division as of today, 94-68. And I agree. I think Atlanta does come away with this. I think they might not have the best player in the division, but I think they have the best all-around team. So I have Atlanta. Ben has the Mets. No bias there, winning the division. What about you guys?
I have the Philadelphia Phillies. I think that top to bottom, they have the best roster in the division. Their pitching is very clearly the best 1 through 5. They're starting the season healthy, which you can't say for the Braves. And
hey, Ranger Suarez is down.
fair, but they brought in Jesus Luzardo, which is kind of where they were last year when they won this division. And ultimately, at some point, they'll be better than they were. Again, I like Kepler more than Hayes a hell of a lot more, especially at that ballpark, the lefty power bat. And I was clamoring for them to move Schwarber to the cleanup spot for years. They finally did it. So it would be unfair if I didn't think success were to follow.
John, is it the Phillies? You're
You're
muted.
muted.
It's
He
the
didn't want to
Phillies.
see. It's
It's
the
the
Phillies.
Phillies.
I thought it
Phillies.
was I thought he was saying it was the Nationals.
That's what I thought.
No,
He didn't want us to hear because he was embarrassed.
Phillies.
Now, in second place, Pacoda has the Mets 92 and 70. That's where I slot in the Phillies, and so does Ben in second place.
That's where I have the Braves.
That's where I have the Braves too.
Uh-oh. The Phillies are in third place according to Pacoda, 86 and 76. They really have them falling off.
86.
That seems.
I'll take the
really-
over. Where can I get that line for the Phillies win total, huh?
And so I have the Mets in third,
Yep.
but I
You
think there's a
about the Mets in
world.
third.
Realistically, I think they're obviously closer to second than fourth, but there's certainly a world where the Nationals could surpass them and surprise if things.
And Ben
Go
didn't
nowhere.
happen to text you an explanation for Mets winning this division, did he?
I heard robot noises, so I don't know.
Okay.
So I have the Mets in third. Ben has the Braves in third. What about you guys?
Mets.
Mets.
I was really hoping somebody would throw the. I think the Nationals are gonna to come in there and.
No, I already did that with the Blue Jays over the Orioles. I can't double down on that take.
But I do think there's a world where if nothing goes right for the Mets and everything goes right for the Nationals, they could swap.
I mean, they're
likely.
one Juan Soto or Lindor injury away from a potential swap.
They're a one.
I won't predict it, but
yeah. And then obviously, I think we all have the same 4 and 5: Washington, then Miami.
Yeah.
Yep. Me and John, the exact same NL East. We believe in the Phillies still.
I don't not believe in the Phillies, but Pacoda does have the Nationals at 69 and 93, and then the Marlins at 61 and 101. So we're gonna review this and see if the Philly love was warranted or if the Mets, will surprise us since we don't have much faith. Now let's kind of go into our overall award predictions. Opening day is this week.
We're doing World Series as well.
Yes, of course. But I'm going to start it off with the AL MVP. I do have Ben's predictions here. He can't defend them, and they are ones that he should be defending. I am picking Jose Ramirez of the Guardians to win the AL MVP. I think he's been underrated his whole career.
Plus
And
2,200 odds. If anybody wants to buy it.
I think he's somebody that could surprise. He's going to always be in that argument. Ben has Adley Rutschman winning the MVP. Yes. If you thought my Jose
plus 8,500 odds, tell him to go place the bet if he believes it.
If you thought my J-Ram pick was crazy, Ben went Adley.
Yeah, listen, at the end of the day, I'm going to go Aaron Judge here. He's a 300 plus hitter who's going to hit over 50 homers and over 120 RBIs. He's going to be playing for a playoff team, a premier team. No Juan Soto. I think easily narratively too. It's an easy award to give the guy who stayed with his team.
70 home runs?
I'm not predicting 70. I mean, I think it could just be 50 plus. But at the end of the day, the top candidates, Bobby Witt, Gunnar Henderson, alongside Judge, they just don't hit for the power that he does. So it's going to be very hard for them to compete with him in the AL unless they have a boom pop year.
And on that, I'm going with Bobby Witt Jr.
I mean, he's the favorite right now.
I think he's going to do it because I just think, Judge, them losing Soto, and I just don't think, are they actually going to pitch the Judge?
Willie Calhoun and Jake Bauers hitting behind him, and he still hit 62 home runs.
Yeah.
And he had to go against Ohtani in the MVP race, and Bobby Witt's no Ohtani.
I mean, breaking news: Mookie Betts trending towards playing in the Dodgers home opener Thursday.
Wow,
well, that's good news.
That's good news for Dylan's fantasy team. And
Yep.
then
Mr. Mookie.
side note, I do have a note from Ben about his NL East division. He says Nats are going to be close this year, but this is the best division in baseball, which I think isn't necessarily true. I think that the NL West and AL East might have better races.
I still think the AL East is the best division in baseball because I think even their worst team in the
AL
league
East is
is
pretty strong
a
this year.
potential playoff team. That we don't have a Marlins or Rockies.
Imagine if we did.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Imagine.
I mean, hopefully this year we do.
I feel like you used to with the Orioles.
Used
Not
to.
even. I mean, that was only like for a couple of years. The Orioles in the early 2010s were still a playoff team.
Yeah.
Nick Markakis. You had the Blue Jays with, Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion. You had still really good teams. They weren't down for long. The Rays were a World Series team in 2008.
Yeah.
So, like, even our worst teams still went far. But let's get back to the awards. So, to reiterate, AL MVP, I have J Ram. Ben's got Adley Rutschman. Dylan's got Judge. John's got Bobby Witt. I think those bottom two, Judge and Witt, I think those are the most likely outcomes.
Yep.
But I think J Ram should definitely be in that conversation. NL MVP, me and Ben both have Shohei.
Yeah, it's not fun, but if he's gonna go back to pitching, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how it's not gonna be him. If it's not Shohei, I like a sneaky Ellie De La Cruz at 20-1.
Ooh.
Well, a lot of people think the Reds could make the playoffs, and I think in
I'm one
terms
of
of the word valuable, if the Reds make the playoffs and Otani's on a super team, potentially there's a world where Ellie, who's going to steal 50 plus bases, could, hit 25, 30 homers and have a pop year.
I totally agree. John?
Otani. I mean, like,
To be clear,
who's
life on
good?
the line, I'm betting Otani. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like-
but instead of us all just saying Otani, I wanted to give some fun analysis.
And I think I'm right there with you, though, with the Ellie. I was one of the ones that picked the Reds. I believe I actually have them winning the division. I do.
Yep.
So if they are to do that, it's going to be on the back of Ellie De La Cruz.
Yeah.
AL Cy Young, I'm going Cole Reagans from the Royals. I think the Royals are going to be a good team, and I think he's going to be that ace that they need.
Who's Ben got?
Ben has Garrett Crochet of the Red Sox.
That's as well who I have. I think Crochet reaches 200 plus strikeouts. I think he's an absolute monster in Boston, and I hate that they traded for him as a Yankees fan.
John?
I have Tariq Skubal winning the game. I think he's just going to put up another dominant year. Because, I mean, look at the numbers he put up last season, and it's just like, I feel like it's just he's going to do it again. It's just he's going to be hard to beat.
All right, NL Cy Young. I'm going Hunter Green from the Reds. The same argument Dylan had for saying Ellie. I think if the Reds do make the playoffs, win their division, it's going to be behind a phenomenal year by a guy who I've been riding high on 4 years. I remember when he got drafted as a two-way player back in like 2016. I think Hunter Green's finally going to have that breakout healthy year. Ben, very vanilla, says Paul Skeens.
Yeah, so does Dylan. Peppery Vanilla says Paul Skeens. I also just think that some of the market is interesting for NL Cy Young because Skeens is 2-1, Wheeler 6-1. I think those are like fine choices. They're easy choices, obviously. Then you get Snell, Burns, Sale. I have some question marks about the ability to stay healthy for all three. Yamamoto, Japanese pitcher, didn't really last a full 162 last year, had a great playoffs, but wasn't consistently good over 162. I have question marks there. Then you have King, Alcantara, and Cease, all of which I think could be moved from the NL to the AL at the trade deadline. And then Strider coming back from injury, Glass now, made of glass. And then we're at someone like Christopher Sanchez at 25-1. So I like Skeens and I like Wheeler as bets. It's boring choices, but I just don't know if anybody else is competing by the end of the year.
Hunter Green is competing.
So I don't like the guys in that mid-level range. I like the money on Skeens or Wheeler, or shoot for the stars with a Hunter Green, a Christopher Sanchez, a Logan Webb, a Shota Amanga. Like, if you're not picking one of the top two, I'd shoot for the stars.
John, who's your
No,
Cy
yeah,
Young?
and be boring too and go Paul Skeens. I mean, like, how do you not? I mean, it's like one of
Pretty
the things
easily. I just wrote
yeah.
down Hunter Green.
I mean, no, I
He did
agree.
Hunter
I
Green
mean,
last year
the
too.
guy added a 98 mile per hour cutter and was
Like,
already a top 3 pitcher in the sport. I don't know how you don't pick him.
It's tough, but I think it's, again, just like I didn't pick Judge, I think it's very, very likely or possible, but I do think Hunter Green's going to be in that conversation. And if it
Yep.
isn't going to be Skeens, I think he could be the guy. Now, rookie of the year, these are always a crapshoot. You never know what you're going to get. You don't know who's going to show up around the All-Star break and blow everybody's minds with their amazing pitching, like a Paul Skeens. I'm going a guy who isn't even starting in the big leagues in April, but I think he will join up May, June, and I think he's going to surprise. That's Augustin Ramirez with the Marlins. He's going to be he's the catcher that the Yankees traded to the Marlins for Jazz Chisholm. He was having an amazing year last year in Double-A, Triple-A, and I think he is going to be a very, very solid player for them. And like outside of Roki Sasaki, who Ben has, I really like him to have a shot to win it.
Yeah. Who did Ben take?
Roki Sasaki.
Okay, I'm taking another catcher in the NL. I'm taking Drake Baldwin of the Atlanta Braves. Sean Murphy starting the year hurt. Baldwin's going to get to bat for this team early on. Lefty batter. And it's the Braves. So naturally, of course, somehow they'll have a rookie of the year candidate just waiting on their roster right when you think maybe they lack a little bit of depth.
and I'm on the same page with Ben here with Sasaki. I just think he's just like.
Do you
I
guys
don't know.
think he's gonna pitch enough? That's like my one concern with
I think
Sasaki
he
is
will.
that
Right.
in a 6-7 man rotation, they're bringing him over from Japan, so not used to the full 162 game season. They'd probably be more likely to rest him if need be. Because when you look at the team's current starting pitching rotation, Sasaki is already a 4-5 guy when you factor in Snell, Yamamoto, Glass now, Sasaki, Otani, Dustin May, like Kershaw. Like at the end of the day, Sasaki obviously is around that 4-5, and I think if anybody were to get rest, it would be Otani. But I wouldn't be shocked if at some point in the middle of the season, Otani and Sasaki alternated starts.
I think he's gonna get enough just purely because I feel like it's just like you look at it time and time again. Like pitchers always get hurt. There's always injuries,
Yeah,
and I just feel like that's where he's gonna shine.
that's fair.
So I think that I'm kind of banking on that a bit, but I mean, we'll see. But I mean, when he does pitch, though, he's filthy. It's like I don't know if you saw him pitch at all.
No. I
It
mean,
is
don't get me wrong.
It's
I wanted him
crazy.
to be wearing pinstripes in New York, so I certainly understand the want for him. I just don't know if
Yeah.
the need for him to play as much is going to be there for the Dodgers. That's just kind of my worry with any Dodger on any award. I mean, Otani obviously one of one, but anybody else in terms of valuable in production just isn't going to be there, or is it just so spread out but behind this super team? Time will tell.
It's just one of those things. I remember quite a few of us picked Yamamoto last year to win Rookie of the Year. I was trying to go back and kind of look at what our
I don't think anybody had Skeens.
I think I
nobody had
had
schemes.
Evan Langford and Cheerio.
I'm gonna pull up last year's and I'll kind of go over that. But I think I was having flashbacks of Yamamoto last year, and that's why I went with somebody who wasn't Sasaki. But then you go to the AL Rookie of the Year, and I am going a little plain and picking Jason Dominguez. Third time's the charm. He's going to be healthy. He's going to be the guy.
Has to produce. Is that who Ben went as well?
No, Ben went Jackson Jobe from Detroit.
Yeah, I'm going to go off the wall here. I'm going to go Yankees back-to-back pitcher rookie of the year is Will Warren. I think the opportunity now is clear as day for Warren with Cole, Tommy John, Schmidt missing the start of the year, Heel out until probably around June, July. Listen, Will Warren is fourth in this rotation at this point, so he's not even the first man out if they, move to a Yarbrough over Cookie Carrasco. Like, Warren is pretty firmly in this rotation at this point in time, and even when Schmidt returns, I think Warren's going to have a really long leash here, and it's not a guy that I believed in from what I saw last year, but it seems this offseason he's really worked on his game. The movement is there on pitches. He's getting Michael King as comparisons, and we saw how well he panned out. And in a rookie of the year race in the AL that doesn't have a name that jumps off the page to me, give me a guy in Warren who's going to have a lot of opportunity.
This is such a stark change from where you were last year on him.
It is. And listen, at the end of the day, one thing that I'll say about the Yankees is sometimes they infuriate me, but pitching is something that they seem under Matt Blake to figure out and work their way through. And when they project that they believe in somebody, usually that has been right. And they weren't saying that we weren't hearing any of this last year about Will Warren. None of this hype was there. Now that the hype is there, is that projecting what they need? Maybe, but again, at the end of the day, I'm willing to take the 12-1 odds on Warren.
Who's your AL Rookie of the Year, John?
I do like Ben's pick, Jackson Jobe. I think he's really good, but I have Jason Dominguez too. I think this is the year,
This is the year?
This is the year. I mean,
he's got to produce. And even if he can't play left field, he'll probably be DHing.
So,
all right, Manager of the Year. I'm going Tito, Terry Francona of the Reds. I'm riding high on my Reds picks. Ben's got Carlos Mendoza, Mets manager. Definitely no bias there.
Yeah, I'm going to go Rob Thompson of the Philadelphia Phillies. I think they could crack 100 wins, and I think it's way more impressive if he does it than the Dodgers.
Crazy, yeah. I like the Reds with Corbin going Terry Francona too.
Yeah,
I do like the Reds. So.
All right. What about AL? I'm going Matt Quatraro, the Kansas City Royals manager.
And Ben's got
AJ Hinch of Detroit.
Yeah, I don't know if the MLB will actually do it after some of the cheating scandal, but I'm going Alex Cora. I think Boston wins the AL East, and I think that they are a mid-90s win team.
See, I have Alex Cora too.
Yeah, my one concern with that prediction is just that, if there's any other option in the AL is as part of a de facto punishment still just to not give him awards.
Yeah. All right. AL home run leader. I'm going Yordan Alvarez with 42.
Did Ben answer these or no?
Ben did. Ben's going Judge at 59.
Yeah, I'll take Judge at 56.
I have Judge at 51.
I wish I had the confidence to take Judge.
I mean, listen, I know you're not super confident in the Yankees, but I think there's a difference between not being confident in the Yankees to produce and not being confident in Aaron Judge to produce.
I just think that if the Yankees don't produce, it's going to be because Judge gets hurt.
It's possible.
NL home run leader. I'm going Matt Olson at 37. Ben went Pete Alonso at 55.
I'm going Schwarber at 41.
I got Ohtani 45.
And then World Series predictions. I have the Dodgers over the Royals in 5 games. Ben has the Mets over the Orioles in 5 games.
This guy, he is drinking the Grimace Gatorade.
Grimace shake.
I have the Dodgers over the Boston Red Sox in 6 games.
Do we just copy each other, Dylan? I swear, because I have the Dodgers Red Sox.
In 6 as well.
No, the full series, but we're pretty close.
Listen,
that's really funny.
As much as I wanted it to be I want it to be my Yankees. I don't fully believe in it. Everything in me wanted to say Phillies over Red Sox in 7. I just we were sitting here talking about Mookie, and I did one more look over at the Dodgers just to see kind of how the lineup would construct without him, and then I was reminded of exactly who's on the roster, and it's one of those picks where I'll be damn happy to be wrong if they don't win it, but I can't be the fool that picks the Mets over the Orioles.
I mean, all three of us did pick the Dodgers to win.
I'm kind of hoping
Yeah,
that
I mean,
How do
the
you
Phillies
at
end up
this point?
winning.
How do you not? But
it
it's
feels
just-
like unlike anything I've ever seen. This feels very reminiscent of, for anybody that's an NBA fan, the Warriors when they had Kevin Durant. It was just, how did you go into it? Like, if you went into an NBA season picking someone else, you were lying to yourself.
I agree.
Yeah.
And just to quickly go over who we had last year, just for fun. I picked Kyle Tucker to win the MVP last year.
In the AL.
Dylan and Ben both went Judge. John went Soto. So
Judge
good
panned
job.
out.
NL MVP, I picked Mookie Betts. Dylan picked. Do you remember who you picked, Dylan?
Yeah.
Pete Alonso. John, you picked Acuna.
He got hurt.
And Ben picked Otani. This might be the worst guesses any of us ever had. AL Cy Young. Dylan, you picked Pablo Lopez.
To be fair, the AL Cy Young last year at this point was such a crapshoot.
Ben picked Carlos Rodon. John, you picked Corbin Burns. And me, with the worst pick out of them all, picked Ryan Pepiot.
He started
Rays.
off good though.
And I believe he's going to be the Rays opening day starter this year.
You want to switch your AL picks to Pepiot?
Run it
Maybe
back
I was,
to back
I was a year
years.
too early. NL Cy Young, I picked Hunter Green last year.
Oh,
picked
back
him
to
again
back.
Back to back, I believe. Dylan picked Zach Wheeler. Ben Zach Gallen, and John Zach Wheeler.
I was really pulling for Wheeler.
AL Rookie of the Year, I picked Wyatt Langford, Dylan Evan Carter, Ben Colt Keith, and John Evan Carter. NL Rookie of the Year, I picked Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Dylan, do you remember who you picked?
Not Paul Skeens.
The grandson of the wind, Jung Ho Lee. Ben picked Michael Bush, and John, with the closest guess out of us all, picked Jackson Churio.
I was close. It's close.
AL Manager of the Year, I picked Joe Espada, Dylan Rocco Baldelli, Ben Aaron Boone, John AJ Hinch. NL Manager of the Year, I picked Craig Counsell, Dylan picked Craig Counsell, John picked Craig Counsell, and Ben picked Dave Roberts. AL and NL home run leaders, I had Yordan Alvarez, again, hitting 45 home runs, and I also picked Fernando Tatis to hit 42. Dylan had Judge with 49 home runs, so you sold our boy a little short.
That's why this year I bumped it to 56.
And you had Alonso at 55.
Yep.
Ben had Judge with 48 and Alonso at 57. And John had Judge with 48 and Alonso at 51. So this isn't the first year you guys had your little weird brains together, picking the same ones.
Yeah, I think it's called chalk.
Yeah. And then World Series, I had the Astros over the Phillies in 5. Dylan Braves over the Astros in 5. Ben Yankees over the Dodgers in 6.
I mean, Ben was matchup.
Spot on. If
and if he follows the
Gil
Nestor
comes in-
Cortez chain of events of how the games played out, he also has the correct outcome.
And then John has the Phillies over the Orioles in 6.
Yep. Well, we all went Dodgers this year, and we were all wrong last year. So let's hope
So
that trend continues.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping I just jinxed the Phillies last year by picking them on this year.
Yeah.
I'm going to get the
Yankees over
Phillies
Braves.
Orioles.
Yankees over Braves in 4, right?
Yep. That's what I heard.
But that's going to do it.
Great fun.
Yes, that's going to do it for us. We'll be back talking about opening day back next week, talking about how that first, series of the year went. Have some studs and duds and
pods dropping every Wednesday.
That's right. So we'll be back at it Season starting. It's going to be a long road ahead just for the Dodgers to win it all, like we said right now.
Yeah,
might as
just
well
like
not even
those
go.
NBA seasons after Kevin Durant joined the Warriors. We all know the ending, but we'll all enjoy the ride. And by
It's all
the
about the
All-Star break,
journey.
we'll lie to ourselves and tell us somebody else is going to win it.
It's all about the journey. But that'll do it here. Corey Jason, John Pauline, Dylan Mel, and about 10 minutes of Ben Mandel signing off till next week.